Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome in to a coffee break on this snowy day in the Mile High City. We've got Darren McKee, Will Peterson, Rachel Vigil hanging out with you for the next 45 minutes as there's a lot to get into. Gentlemen, how are we today? Will, it's been a minute since we've seen you. How are you, friend?
I'm great. I do see you once a week, though. It's just,
True.
you see DMAC every day. You see Mace
do.
a lot. You see James a lot. But I'm here every Wednesday, I promise. But it has been a minute. So I'm good. Listen, this coaching search, I was on Denver Sports Tonight on 104.3 The Fan last night with Mason James, and I said, I think they're only going to do 6, right? Like it just feels like they're narrowed in on this 6. And then this morning – we wake up, number 7, Jim Caldwell has entered the fold, which I know we'll obviously talk to. So my long-winded way of saying I am good, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
Happy to hear. Okay, yeah, we have to get into this because I wasn't expecting this name to pop up either. So what's our main takeaway? Are we here for it or are we not, DMAC?
It's interesting. It could mean a couple things. First, he's a very qualified candidate, so you just should do your due diligence, although he hasn't been doing anything lately. Second, let's not look past the Peyton Manning impact. Peyton Manning likely still has a good relationship with Greg Penner, and Peyton Manning loves Jim Caldwell. They're very, very tight. Third, let's see how many interview candidates they really do get to. Every team has to satisfy the Rooney Rule. So are we sure they haven't already made their minds up and want to act a little bit quickly because they cannot interview D'Amico Ryans until next week? So to satisfy the Rooney Rule, if they want to, get ahead of the game a little bit and they already have their mind made up, perhaps it could be Jim Caldwell, perhaps it could be Jim Harbaugh, and maybe they don't want to wait around. Who knows? That being said, I don't know how many candidates they're going to completely have, and just because they're on a list doesn't mean they've interviewed them yet. And Jim Caldwell, talk about sneaking through the side door, right? Like, we didn't see that coming at all. Good for Josina Anderson to report it because he's being interviewed today. Yeah. And so, wow. We didn't even hear about that, and now we find out it's today. Good for Josina again. And I understand Caldwell's going to have another job interview, too. This is not going to be the only opportunity. Caldwell is 67 years old, which is the same exact age as Jerry Rosberg and also the same age as Tony Dungy. Now, this would be a turn in a radically different direction because you're going with a much older, experienced coach. It does feel like, guys, that you've got to have done this job on some level to get this job. I mean, that seems clear, crystal clear. So I think it's a very interesting addition. And it doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be 7 candidates. All it means is there's 7 people linked to the job.
True.
Yeah, a few good points there by DMAC that I want to hit on. First of all, if this means that Jim Caldwell has a shot to be the next head coach with Peyton Manning as your president of football operations, because that relationship is so strong, well, DMAC would finally get his way. I would frankly get my way. Rachel would get her way. And George Payton, bye-bye. See you later, dude. So if there is a tie there between Caldwell and Manning, listen, Caldwell's coached in a Super Bowl, right? And everyone wants Peyton Manning to come work for the Denver Broncos. So would you take the Caldwell-Manning package over Harbaugh, over Sean Payton? That's something I would strongly, strongly consider, especially, it's not personal. I always want to say it's never personal. But if it got George Payton out the door too, that would satisfy, I think, a lot of Broncos fans. So that's the really interesting wrinkle to me here.
You guys, I just don't see Peyton Manning returning this season, or to be completely honest, in the next 3. I think he's really enjoying what he's able to do and the freedom he has to go do whatever. I just feel like there's nothing that's linking him to actually coming back into the football business operations. Do you guys have some information that I apparently don't know? Because I don't see it happening.
We just got it. Jim Caldwell. I mean, that just.
I feel like your Rooney Rule, though, is more likely than Peyton Manning being tied and coming back.
Listen, you've got to satisfy the Rooney Rule for sure. But to think Jim Caldwell isn't a legit candidate, period, is ridiculous. I mean, he took the Detroit Lions to the playoffs. He's been a Super Bowl coach. He is linked up with Peyton Manning. I think, yes, it satisfies the Rooney Rule, but it also gives you something very significant to think about. What if Peyton Manning was your president of football operations, meaning he's really the GM over George Payton, and Jim Caldwell's your coach. I mean, you could have George Payton there for a little bit, and you say, well, I can't imagine Peyton Manning X, Y. I can imagine Peyton Manning being the president of football. I sure can imagine that. I think that's what he's always wanted to do. So I think it gives you a very interesting option that we had not been thinking about before.
So Jim Caldwell is essentially just the way to get Peyton Manning. That's what both of you think.
Well, no. Again, that's to lessen what he's done some amazing things. At 67, at 57, I don't want to be doing anything. Never mind at 67, but to each his own. And so, no, he's a very deserved qualified candidate, flat out, period.
Yeah, I think it's a factor, Rachel, but I'm with D-Mac. Like, his resume is really, really strong. He won everywhere he went. He won in Indy. Like we said, took him to a Super Bowl. I believe, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, he lost that Super Bowl to Sean Payton, right?
That was the Colts? Boy, yeah. I think so. That's the Colts Saints. That's the only one.
Jim Caldwell versus Sean Payton, the onside kick, the Tracy Porter, the Peyton Manning pick six. Yeah. And then, like D-Mac said, he had success with the Detroit Lions. No one has success with the Detroit Lions. Obviously, Dan Campbell was a fun story this year, and the Lions may be up and coming. But for literally decades and decades, Jim Caldwell was their best head coach. So, yeah, I think it's twofold or maybe threefold. I think all the points here are valid. I think the Peyton Manning point is valid. I think that he's got the resume and deserves it is valid. And I'm with D-Mac. He is unfortunate if you want to just say he's checking a box, he's part of the Rooney Rule. I don't think the rule is intended that way. I don't think Greg Penner's going to use it that way. But there are owners around the league who have used it that way, the quote-unquote check a box and make a sham of it. And that's an unfortunate way because the rule has great intentions. Only about half the league uses it properly.
It does help satisfy the Rooney Rule, but it also puts you in front of a really qualified candidate and gives you something to think about. And if you want to move to somebody else quicker, you do have to get through the Rooney Rule. So that's a factor as well. And Raheem Morris could be interviewed this week. And D'Amico Ryans, again, would have to be next week. The Rooney Rule does not include candidates within the building. So I love the intentions of the Rooney Rule, okay? Because how else are you going to be better diversified in this whole process? And teams were just abusive to this in the past. I mean, if you did not have the Rooney Rule, seriously, these names wouldn't be coming up necessarily, and you really would just be hiring Jim Harbaugh, just like that. It'd be like insider trading. It's just, I hate when guys just get classified as a Rooney Rule candidate who are well-deserved to be candidates completely on their own. And that's absolutely who I think the Broncos are talking to. So I think it's fine. I think you get into tricky territory just saying, oh, he's just a Rooney Rule guy. No, I see a path for Jim Caldwell. I do, and it's a really interesting one because to me, it would involve Peyton Manning as well. And I think we're absolutely seeing Peyton Manning influence here. I mean, Jim Caldwell, when was the last time he worked in the NFL? It's been a minute. So I think something's going on with Peyton Manning and Greg Penner, which I love.
Interesting. Well, I'm hopeful for both of you and your ideas because I would love to see it. I just personally, I don't see it this year or the next coming years. But Jake also does have fantastic stats always on the back end. He said Caldwell coached the Buffs from 82 to 84. So he does have some Colorado ties, which is very interesting. And we're going to get into more Bronco talk too, because Andrew Mason is going to join us a little bit later. But I do want to talk about the Colorado Avalanche because, of course, Will, being, one of our Avalanche insiders, we love you. You guys, I'm really worried. I'm really worried about this team right now because, too, you can look at the injuries and they don't have that many anymore. But the losing streak and what's going on with this Avalanche team scares me, Will.
Yeah, I tweeted it to D-Mac last night. 11th in the West, even if you have games in hand, isn't pretty. We didn't expect to be here on January 11th talking about the defending Stanley Cup champions being 11th in the West, few points out of a playoff spot. You're right, Rachel. Two things. First of all, the injury thing, yeah, it's still a factor, right? You're still missing Landeskog, Nichushkin, Byram, Manson. I get it. But we've talked about it. People are kind of sick of the injury thing. Like, move on, right? Like, either Sakic and McFarland need to make a trade, or the players on the roster. I'm looking at Ben Myers of the world. Adrian Dater tweeted his stat line last night. He's played in like 19 games and has 1 point. Like, do something, dude. That's what made the Stanley Cup champions so good last year is Rachel, D-Mac. We did all those post-game shows, and every night we were talking about a different guy. The stars played great. The depth played great. It's been no depth this year. Second, and I know we'll get into last night's game, and D-Mac was there. He was all over it. They caught a really unfortunate break last night. They stormed back to tie that game 4-4, and then a missed high stick and a phantom embellishment call ruined their plans of 2 points or at least one. They got 0 as Florida took it 5-4 in regulation.
After the game in the locker room, and that locker room was somber. Let me tell you guys, it was quiet. It was heavy. I mean, they're on their way to Chicago, so they literally pack up their own bags like little kids with hockey bags. That's just the way it goes in the NHL. But, I mean, it was like you could hear a pin drop, and Mikko Rantanen was steaming. As he pointed out, he didn't want to get fined. He was trying to not get fined, but he said it was a high stick, but the refs are okay. The two things do not, coalesce.
Correct.
After the game, Jared Bednar said, I think the players should let the players figure it out. Meaning, why if you're not going to call the high stick on comp for fine, don't call anything. Just let it go. Let the players decide it, which usually does happen in the NHL unless something in the last 5 minutes of a tied game is egregious. And certainly, whatever interference call and flopping happened on Mikko's penalty, that wasn't egregious. I mean, give me a break. The puck was tied up in the corner, and that's just some bumping around. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Comfort got whacked in the face. So Mikko was steaming about it. And there's another thing I can sense here, guys, with this team. I don't feel a real tight bond with Georgiev and the team. I'm not saying they dislike him. I'm not saying that at all. But you got to understand, Darcy was like one of the guys, man. Like, they were really bonded together. Darcy was going through some little weird moments about halfway through the year. And around this time, he started getting red hot. Georgiev has played in a franchise-tying 12th game in a row. And it's just like, I think they like him okay, but he's just not like one of them yet. And one of them, I mean Stanley Cup champions. And I think that's a tough club to fit into. So there's just this really weird feeling behind the scenes where, yes, I know there's 4 big players still to come back. And it does appear, guys, Val Nichushkin apparently is the most important player on the Colorado Avalanche. Yeah. I mean, I guess, because they really can't get their act together without him. With Val, they are a completely different team. And I think this is crazy. Crazy. I think he's a more valuable player to this team than Nathan MacKinnon. How insane is that? So we got some weird moments happening here, guys. And I would be concerned. That game went from the first 40 minutes, the worst game I was at all year, to unbelievably exciting, to all of a sudden one of the worst games I was at all year because of the way they lost.
Mm-hmm. Why do you say that about Val Nichushkin being more important than MacKinnon?
Well, listen, Nathan MacKinnon's a better hockey player. I'm not trying to say Nichushkin's better than Val. I'm just saying the way the team operates and the way the team scores just has been, I mean, it's brutal without Val Nichushkin in there. Look at the games. Look at the losses. Look at their record without Val compared to without MacKinnon. I think without MacKinnon at some point, they were like 5-2 or something like that. They are really suffering without Val Nichushkin because he's a complete player that does all sorts of things. And especially he's a big body in front of the net. Hey, good for Curtis McDermott, okay? He had 2 assists. I'm happy for Dermy. He was playing defense last night. But he was playing defense last night. I mean, we had a 4th line of Cogs, Newhook, and Logan O'Connor. These guys are playing 2nd, 3rd line shifts, sometimes 1st line shifts. I mean, it is out of whack here, guys. And you cannot, I mean, how many games did they just start terribly? Soft defense, mistake by the big guys, like you mentioned, Taves, and then really sort of like, sort of goaltending. I mean, this is not the team we're used to.
No, I mean, I definitely agree. You wonder, too, if because there's so much attention on Nathan MacKinnon, that Val Nichushkin is just such a dominant player that when that attention shifts, he's just really able to emerge and be like that star as well, Will.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they all thrived during the Cup run last year, right? MacKinnon was getting so much attention that every night it was Nichushkin, or if it was Burakovsky, or if it was Kadri, or whatever. And that's why McCarr won Conn Smythe. He was brilliant, but again, other teams were so focused on shutting down McKinnon. He still had like 24 points in the playoffs that McCarr ended up winning that award. So yeah, you're right. Nichushkin thrives when he's the fourth, fifth option because teams forget about him, which is silly as that sounds because he's such a good player. That's how deep the Avalanche were just 7-8 months ago. Guys, another factor in all this is where's Joe Sakic? Where's Chris McFarland? Like, it's time. It's time. You have to make a move. And I know the deadline's not for another, 6 weeks or so. I don't care. This team's in desperation mode. If you played Mario Kart, they just hit the banana peel and they're spinning around. Like, McFarland and Sakic have to do something now. Ignite energy into this team today, tomorrow, this week. DMAC mentioned it. Georgiev's played 12 in a row. We know Francouz battled a little bit of an injury, right? But is goalie something to pursue? That's something they talked about last year at the trade deadline with Kemper until he got insanely hot, like DMAC mentioned. I keep saying it. Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, like up in Chicago, right? Like, they're two of the best players in the world. They're getting older, but they've won 3 rings, and the Blackhawks stink. They're at the very bottom of the Western Conference. Call about them. Like, I'm just sick of this, Gabe's going to come back and save the day. Gabe hasn't been out there for 3 months. We have no idea what Gabe's going to bring to the table if and when he finally gets back on the ice. By the way, Bednar constantly says no update there. Who else is starting to get a little worried of when are we going to see Gabe Landeskog? So I'm kind of ranting and raving now, but like, to me, it comes back to the front office. Like, okay, guys, we've seen enough sample size now. You guys were awesome last year. 4 trades. We always talk about the 4 trades. The Manson, Cogliano, Lehkonen, Sturm. Well, it's time to start doing another 4 trades because that's your only hope at winning the Stanley Cup this year.
Yeah, no, true. I appreciate the rant there, Will. I almost called it the rage, but the rant, I appreciate it. I'm with you. I'm really worried about Gabriel Landeskog. We are supposed to get updates, though, for a lot of other players, including Nichushkin, tomorrow morning, hopefully. So definitely stay tuned. We'll give you guys all the updates there. But we do need to talk about Coach Prime because he was in attendance for the national championship. He may have leaked that he was going to open up the season week 0 against ASU. And it looks like the Pac-12 came back and said, no, that's not going to happen. So Bertrand Marcelo said, source, in an interesting development, the plan for a week 0 game between Colorado and Arizona State has been nixed after Deion Sanders leaked it to Kirk Herbstreit on ESPN. Pac-12 said, hey, everybody, hold on. Coach Prime, you have a lot of power. You need to hold on real quick, though, Will. DMAC with the hat today. Look at you.
Yeah. Look at that.
Well, listen.
I was getting ready for week 0.
Not anymore.
The Brandon Marcello article is really good, right? Because if you go and read it, he writes like 500 words, and the takeaway from the 500 words is the petty Pac-12 is just mad. They're just mad that Deion went on College Game Day or College Primetime, whatever, and told Herbstreit and Fowler and Nick Saban, whoever else was up there, that we're playing week 0. And then Herbie said it again on the broadcast. And you're right, Rachel. The petty Pac-12 had to say, we're more powerful than you, so we're nixing this just because we're mad at you. How lame is this? There's no reason to get rid of it, literally, other than the fact they're mad at Deion Sanders.
Yeah, but time out, guys. You want to play in August in Tempe, Arizona? I don't care if you play the game at night. And I get it. Prime wants to give himself the best shot to start off well instead of getting smoked by TCU. And against my Sun Devils, you probably have a shot at it. They're in shambles right now. So I'm not going to bore you with Sun Devil football talk, but it's not good. But that always seemed dicey to me. We're gonna start the year in Tempe in August. Have you guys ever been to Tempe, Arizona in August? I have.
At 8 p.m., it's still like 95 degrees, isn't it?
95. We would pray for 95.
Oh, geez.
No, Rachel, I was there Parents' Weekend in October a few years ago. October against Washington. It was 95 at 10 o'clock at night. Listen, if you were to play, all right, hold on, time out, I guess. If you were to play the game, where the Cardinals play in Glendale, I guess, but does CU and ASU warrant a game there? You could do it. If you were to do that, it would be fine. But I'm laughing here because the Pac-12 can't get out of their own way. They're already chasing off USC and UCLA. They're going to have to bring in a bunch of new teams. Prime's the best thing they have. Now that I think about it, they should play at the Cardinal Stadium. They should play at the Roomba. Oh, no, wait, that's in Las Vegas. Whatever that place looks like there in Glendale. That actually would be kind of cool, wouldn't it? You put it on national TV, you kind of, Prime and CU sort of wins, but they're shooting it down, huh? So how did that even happen? How did Deion even come up with that?
I don't know how Deion came up with it, but you're right. This is nothing but good publicity for a conference that's circling the toilet, and they nix it because they're petty, because he went on a stage much bigger than them, a national title game, something they haven't sniffed in years and years, and broke some fun news. And whoever the idiots running the Pac-12 are said, no, we can't have any fun. So the more we talk about this, the more it ticks me off, because it would have been nothing but good publicity. You're right. Play it in Glendale, throw it on ESPN, get 10 million people watching it, and instead they're like, no, we're mad at you because you told everyone, so you can't do that anymore.
Can I tell you something funny? Now, Rachel worked for a conference. Rachel, what was the conference you worked for?
I worked for the Western Athletic Conference for 3 years.
Right, so the WAC. Did you know the WAC was based in Colorado, which is wild, but the WAC had to be the most spread out conference of all time. Like, where are you going to put the offices? And I guess Colorado makes as much sense as anywhere.
I would travel from like Seattle to Chicago down to like the very tip, like southern tip of Texas. Like
wild conference, crazy conference. And UNC baseball actually played in that conference for quite a while. Now they're in the Summit League. And so we had, but that was it. How many other teams were in the WAC in Colorado, but Rachel worked for the office here? My point is, do you guys know where the Pac-12 office is?
Somewhere in California, I would guess.
San Francisco.
Yeah,
so it's the Pac-12. It's Corvallis and Eugene and Boulder and, Los Angeles and Arizona, Utah. And you put your offices in the most expensive part of the world. Like, you could put your offices, like, for the WAC, they were in Colorado. This is how stupid the Pac-12 is, okay? That you spend these – they're idiots. I don't know what to say. I actually love the concept of the conference, but the conference itself they're like morons. They've cheapened the competition. They do dumb things time after time. To not embrace this, what Deion said is ridiculous. I don't know if ASU has a problem with it. Like, maybe ASU didn't know this information and they were upset with it, but it does seem petty. I agree with you.
No, the article claims that ASU jumped at the opportunity. This article from this guy who's a well-respected reporter says Arizona State was thrilled to be the team that was going to play CU in week 0.
Wow.
And literally, they nixed this because they're mad at Deion Sanders for going on ESPN and talking too much.
Yeah, because think about it for a second. You're in week 0. You probably do play in Glendale. You probably don't play at Sun Devil Stadium. That really would be ridiculous. But now you got a bowl game. You have a bowl game to start the season. How cool would that be? This is bad mistake. This would be a lot of excitement. It would get national exposure. You could play, where the Cardinals play, not Sun Devil Stadium, because there's nothing wrong with Sun Devil Stadium except that it would be 115 degrees.
Sure. But, and two, if CU goes and wins, they've already got a little bit of national exposure. That just amps up week 1, like you mentioned, against TCU. Like, it just gets people to be even more excited. It's interesting. I think it's all petty, but I think Coach Prime has showed, though, the power that he does have. And the Pac-12 is just like, hey, we need to slow down. We need to slow our roll a little bit here. You never know.
Well, it is funny because we know that he was just trying to make something happen. It wasn't already done.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a little sauce. We got a little sauce with Coach Prime. That's kind of fun. That's no doubt about that.
The drama continues with Coach Prime. All right. Well, Andrew Mason is now officially with us. Andrew, how are you this morning, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are y'all doing?
We're good. We're good. Mace, we're going to get into your, players of the years and all this, but I need to get your thoughts first on Jim Caldwell interviewing with the Broncos here today.
Well, the first thing you start with, and you can read about it at denversports.com, is the Peyton Manning connection, because Peyton and Jim Caldwell worked together for 10 seasons from 2002 through 2011. Peyton speaks highly of him. In fact, there was a fairly extensive piece in the Washington Post last month talking about Caldwell wanting to get back into the game, and one of, if not the most prominent source in the story as far as extolling Caldwell's virtues is Peyton Manning. So I think there's a couple of things going on here, and one of them I think is I think you want to give an interview to somebody that Peyton Manning thinks highly of. This is Caldwell's second interview this week. He interviewed with Carolina earlier this week. He's an interesting fallback option if you don't get Jim Harbaugh or Sean Payton, because his history is in making quarterbacks better. And it's not just Peyton Manning. Joe Flacco, I know Will doesn't want to hear about this because it's the infamous playoff run for the Ravens, but Joe Flacco played his best ball with Jim Caldwell, won a Super Bowl MVP with Jim Caldwell.
Raheem Moore.
Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford got better by leaps and bounds working with Jim Caldwell. The only thing is he had a couple of health issues a few years back, and he hasn't been a head coach since 2017. But when you work well with quarterbacks, you've been to a Super Bowl, which now, by the way, that's 4 Broncos coaching candidates who have taken their team to a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. And you left Detroit with a winning record. No one has done that as a full-time coach in Detroit in 50 years, but he did. Jim Caldwell did a lot of things right. He's not on that first tier, but I think he could be very solidly in that second tier.
All goes back to Peyton Manning, you three. You all started off with Peyton Manning. So
yeah.
I don't know. I don't see it happening, but of course we'll see. Will, as always, an absolute pleasure having you on today. Thank you so much. As we get into Mace, let's take your offensive player of the year. Hit us. Who you got?
I got Jerry Jeudy. Look, at the start of the season, hoped it would be Russell Wilson, but even though he played well down the stretch, you just could, or at least in the last 2 games and say 3 of the last 4 that he started, you just couldn't honor a guy who was 27th or 28th in 3 across-the-board quarterback metrics this year. The other guy I thought about was Latavius Murray and how he galvanized the running game. But with Jeudy, last 6 weeks of the season, he was on a pretty spectacular pace. If he can take what he did the last 6 weeks of the year and do it over 17 games, you're talking about a 1,400-yard wide receiver, someone who's a legitimate wide receiver 1. Once they started moving him into the X receiver spot that Cortland Sutton had previously had, you started seeing the results. We saw in week 18 against the Chargers how good he could look with some creative use on end arounds and things like that. And so it was hard. Like you had, and the other thing on trying to choose an offensive player of the year is like everybody got hurt at some point. So you didn't have one person who endured over the year and played really well. So you were taking like fragments of seasons, but ultimately I thought Jeudy had the best year of anybody on offense, and he probably did the most for his career. He might have saved his Broncos career by what he did down the stretch of the season.
I'd agree with you. G-Mac, who's yours?
Jerry Jeudy, by far, not only is the best offensive player, he was the best player, period, on the Broncos. Second was Justin Simmons. Third might have been Alex Singleton. And then, all-pro voted by the players, Patrick Surtain. Those were your guys this year, okay? Let's be honest. And all 4 of them had, except – and maybe Josie Jewell is sort of right there too.
In the mix.
Listen, it's weird because, like, if you looked at the all-pro voting for the players, Justin Jefferson was voted the best receiver. So that was just an extraordinarily deep receiving class. And, that's good. You need a great receiver. And Jerry Jeudy is a great receiver. And the one thing about Jerry Jeudy that has come true, they always talked about his route running. His football IQ in terms of being a wide receiver is extraordinary. I mean, he may, how about this for a bold prediction? He may go down as the best football IQ wide receiver in Denver Broncos history. The fact that he had the instinct and the wherewithal knowledge to keep running to the sideline on that scramble at the end of the first half with Russell Wilson. And all credit to Russell Wilson, too. Extraordinary throw. That entire play was, like, amazing. I mean, by far, the best play of the entire year. And as good of a throw as it was by Russell Wilson, and it was exceptional, Jerry Jeudy's instincts to keep going to keep, because he was not open when that ball was thrown. He was going to a spot, and he could have cut that route off Mace at any point because he was on the other side of the field. He could have gone more towards the middle. He could have cut more towards the side. I mean, he just knew where the pocket was to go. And I just am blown away by how good he is as a wide receiver. And I think as he just sort of, grows up as a human being, he'll just get better and better and better and better. And I hopefully stay injury free. There's no doubt who the number one receiver is. And to me, Jerry Jeudy is quickly. It's tough because he's in the same class as Justin Jefferson, who is so extraordinary. But Jerry Jeudy's right there. And I'm glad he's on the team. He's a no doubt fifth-year extension. I don't know if you can quite sign him to a new contract right now because you have contracts with Patrick and Sutton that you got to sort of worry about. But Jerry Jeudy is a big-time keeper to me for the long run.
The interesting thing about those contracts, DMAC, as well, is that the way they're structured in terms of the guaranteed money, they're effectively 1 year less than the number. So Courtland Sutton signed a 4-year contract that started this year, but effectively you can get out of it pretty much scot-free after 2024. Okay. And Tim Patrick, you can get out of it after next year. Now, I think Patrick, if he can come back from the ACL injury, is still going to be in the mix. But the planning on it, and I know you don't want me to give credit to George Payton, but I'm going to give credit to him here on one thing. It seemed like the planning on these wide receiver contracts was accounting for Jerry Jeudy being the guy getting the big check when it was time for his rookie contract to expire.
And I don't want to give up on KJ Hamler either. I know we're concerned about his injuries, but he possesses a dynamic ability that nobody else on the team has. And a lot of people just see short, fast receivers and think, oh, that's Tyreek Hill, that's this guy, that's the other guy. KJ Hamler's a real football player. He is a real, honest-to-God football player. He just can't stay healthy. But I don't want to give up on him because he really does present a skill set nobody else has that is harder to find than you think. So I really like KJ Hamler if he can be healthy. So I want to stick with him too. I think you got to make a choice quickly between Tim Patrick and Courtland Sutton because it seems to be the same guy right now.
Gosh, and I hope you would go with one we didn't see this year. But again, you never know what can happen when you come back off of injuries. That's a whole other conversation that we can have. All right, defensive player of the year. Who you got, Mace?
We're going to have that later today at denversports.com. So,
okay.
It better be Justin Simmons. If it's not Justin Simmons, I don't know what we're watching.
I'll just say I'll say is it's not a guy who was an all-pro as selected by the NFLPA today. And this is not to denigrate the season that Pat Surtain had.
Of course not.
He had a very good year, but I think that there was at least one player who had a better season when taking the entire body of work into account. And you'll read about that at denversports.com here in a little while.
Yeah, Surtain had a great year overall. You couldn't have done better with him as a cornerback.
Yep.
5-12. Okay? That's what you get. It's not like you don't want great cornerbacks, and he is one, as acknowledged by his peers, which is an incredible honor. I think that's incredible. 5-12. And the bummer about Surtain at corner, and I don't know who your player is going to be, but I'll just talk about Justin Simmons. When you play in the middle of the field like Simmons does, you inherently can be involved with more plays. Surtain can just be eliminated too easily. That's the problem with cornerback. Now, I'd rather have a great cornerback than a great safety. But what Justin Simmons did this year was, it was otherworldly. It was the best year of his career, and he missed like 5 games. So I don't know who your player is going to be, but Justin Simmons was extraordinary.
I'll say this. Whoever gets the Broncos coaching job, when that coach starts calling players, we all know the first player that the coach calls is going to be Russell Wilson. The next player needs to be Justin Simmons because not only did he play exceptionally well, especially down the stretch, but he seems very tired of all the garbage, all the losing. I think you've got to sell what your program is and how you're going to turn this around to Justin Simmons. I think you got to start by making him believe that, okay, if you stay here and you stay with this, I promise you we're going to have the kind of success that you haven't experienced as a pro and that you deserve to experience.
Also, I went like this because for some reason in my head, I was thinking like, then they go out into a meeting, like the first person he's going to call out is Russell Wilson. But now I realize you mean calling on the phone and having a conversation, correct?
Oh yeah,
Mace?
Because the coach is gonna have to make a lot of phone calls when they step on the job. But I think that the coach is going to have to sell his vision to Justin Simmons because I don't want to put words or thoughts in his mouth, but you could see at press conferences, you could see kind of in the locker room, it's just the frustration has accumulated now, and he looks around the last couple of years and he's seen Von Miller get traded. He saw Bradley Chubb get traded. It's like, okay, they keep selling year after year. I'm still here. I'm still dealing with all this, and he's an incredibly talented player on what's been a bad team for most of his career.
I guess it's him and Quinn Miners who are the most ticked off guys, as Quinn Miners doesn't like ring around the rosy with the Chiefs, even though he's got nothing to do with it. I love the fact Quinn Miners was upset with that, by the way. Good. Be ticked off. Be upset about losing to the Chiefs. Simmons needs to be the McKinnon of the Broncos. He needs to be there. I haven't done squadoosh. I haven't accomplished anything. Yep. Simmons needs to have that attitude that Nathan McKinnon had. Nathan McKinnon, highly regarded as one of the best players in the world. Justin Simmons, easily regarded as one of the best safeties in the NFL and is paid like that. But he's got to just stand up there, in my opinion, and vocalize, we haven't done anything since I've been here, and that's not acceptable. I think Quinn Miners in his second year is kind of vocalizing that. I think it's time for the Broncos to have a little bit more of that attitude that, hey, everything's going to be great. We're all a bunch of great players. We had a great practice. All this sunshine, rainbow, Russell Wilson crap needs to go in the trash can. It's time to get upset and time to be motivated. If I hear again what a great practice and how everybody is awesome, including Salby, I'm going to throw up. Peyton Manning would get up there and he would make guys accountable. It's okay, Russ, to just say that's not acceptable and here's what we've got to do better specifically. And Quinn, it's okay to say, I hate the Chiefs. I hate the Raiders. I'm not doing a jersey swap. Those guys make me want to puke. I haven't made it to the playoffs, and I feel like a fool compared to the rest of my buddies here in the NFL. It's all right. If we're all just sunshine, rainbows, and puppy dogs, we're going to get squashed like a bug again.
I'm guessing you're anti-field day this year, by the way, D-Mac.
You cannot have field day. You cannot, and it's not the one day. It's what the one day says. Okay? No, you cannot have freaking field day this year. You haven't earned stupid field day. When they had color coordinated shirts for field day, it's like field day wasn't enough. We really thought this crap out. Listen. If you want to, in the last 20 minutes of the final practice of mandatory minicamp, do an egg race for fun. I've got no problems with something like that. But have a practice, do something fun, rah-rah team. We'll see you at training camp. And then don't go put on 25 pounds, Russ. Stick to your diet. And if you can do that, we'll be all right. A field day would be abysmal. A field day would show you are just so freaking ridiculously out of touch with what's been happening here in the past. Like Nathaniel Hackett famously said when asked about the 14-game losing streak, we weren't here. Oh, okay. You weren't, we weren't here. All right, Nate. Those are some famous last words. We weren't here. Well, guess what? Now you're gone. You're also not here. That was another one that made me want to puke. The Raiders, they're a good team. My dad worked for them. The Chiefs, well, we weren't here for all that. Who the hell do you think you're talking to? All right.
There's your social clip.
Go on a lot longer. I was like 30 seconds late to starting the stop clock, so we probably got a minute 30 rant out of D-Mac.
Well, doesn't that piss you guys off too? Doesn't that make you upset?
Yes. This has got to be all business this offseason. It's got to be maximizing every drop of time. I don't recall field days when Peyton Manning was around. Okay,
Preposterous.
You never
I recall bleeding everything out of every day that you could possibly get in the off season, and then if you've gotten everything done, don't give a field day. Just say, hey, everybody go scatter. Extra vacation day. That's what guys really want.
Yeah.
They want to be in Cabo or Vegas or wherever early. They don't want to.
By the way, I don't like those Mickey Mouse games either. Set a schedule, stick to it. Be on time, like you write. Be on time. You weren't on time at all this year. Everything was late. Then you got stupid field day. Then we have aggressive walkthroughs in training camp with no 7-on-7s, 1-on-1s, 9-on-7s. You didn't have football. You didn't play your starters in preseason. And, you're surprised that you're not coordinated and you're not calloused? And the end result is you're the most injured team in the NFL. It was pathetic. Pathetic. And George Payton allowed it to happen, okay? And Russell Wilson and his – listen, Mark Rodgers, I know, now I'm going off again. Forget it. I'm moving on to the next thing.
Problem number one. You just confirmed it right there, D-Mac. Okay, I do want to get into, though, because there are some names that people know and have grown to love here that could be free agents. So I want to go through with both of you these names, and you tell me, are you getting rid of them or are you keeping them? You ready?
Yep.
Calvin Anderson. Keep or get rid of?
Get rid of. Great guy, though.
Keeping, because he's a relatively inexpensive swing back up at tackle.
Okay. Billy Turner.
Bye-bye.
He looks physically like he's at the end of his rope, and he really struggled on Sunday as well. I think he's done. Move on.
Yeah.
Tom Compton.
He'd have to wear a T-shirt saying, "Hello, my name is Tom Compton," for me to even know who he was. See ya.
Yeah. Kind of the same thing as Billy Turner. Like, the back problems caught up to him this year. I think physically he's probably done.
Kareem Jackson.
Yes, because I think you could get him at a low price, and I don't believe in Caden Stearns yet.
Yeah, the thing with Caden Stearns is he can't stay healthy. It's the old cliche, best ability is availability. Kareem Jackson is one of two guys who started all 17 games this year, along with Pat Surtain. Has he lost a step? Yes.
Yeah.
But he has good chemistry with Justin Simmons. I think that's one where you see how the market settles. And then if you're getting in April, he's unsigned, you haven't made another move at safety, bring him back on about a $2 million deal.
I agree with Mace. Low priority, but yes.
Okay. Mike Boone.
No. See you later.
That's what I was going to say.
You got a bunch of running backs. I want to see Latavius Murray back here. And Chase Edmonds, perhaps, with Javonte Williams would be good.
You can restructure Chase Edmonds and get him back. He's got a $6 million deal, but it's not guaranteed. So the Broncos have the upper hand in getting a restructure on Edmonds. Yeah. That makes more sense at this point. He's not younger, but I think he fits.
Yeah.
This one I feel like some people have mixed opinions on. Dalton Reisner.
Maybe. That's a big maybe. Listen, it's hard to find quality guards with experience in the NFL in the free agency market because, first of all, they're valuable. And it's hard to find guys like that out there. Dalton, I say maybe because I don't know how these injuries, he's got a lot of them. And I don't know how he's going to work through all of them. I think he's going to be like a Kareem Jackson. You're going to let the market settle itself out. And if he's still there, fine. If not, you're probably drafting a guy or moving on.
Yeah, I think that the same thing. The market's going to dictate that. I don't think the Broncos want to give him the biggest offer, but if you look a week into free agency and he's still available and the prices come down, then I think you bring him back. But I'll say this: the way the way Dalton Reisner was hugging reporters, it was like a receiving line at a wedding. He was hugging reporters as they were leaving the locker room on Monday after the last media availability of the season. Felt very much like a man who's saying his goodbyes to Denver. So I think if the market dictates it, you bring him back. But the weird thing is D-Mac and Rachel, you have a new coach, a new set of eyes coming in. Let's say it's Jim Harbaugh. And Harbaugh looks at the free agent market and says, oh, the best free agent guard is the one that is here because it's a very shaky guard market. There are some intriguing options at tackle, but guard, there's not much out there. he may well say, okay, let's just bring him back. So it's kind of hard to gauge right now, but everything points toward at the best case scenario for him with the Broncos being second wave of free agency after the market settles.
Okay. Eric Tomlinson.
Gotta think about that for a second. If you can bring him back, I would. I wouldn't spend a lot of money on him.
Mm-hmm.
But I liked him. I thought he played well. I think he has a good role for the team.
Mm-hmm.
He has a very specific role as mostly a blocking tight end, big body, plays on special teams. If you get the same kind of contract that you got for him this year, no reason not to bring him back. You're gonna need some blockers. I mean, you're probably gonna need a guy like Andrew Beck back too.
I love Andrew. See that? To me, he's a must sign back.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe how valuable Andrew Beck actually is. But because I don't like fullbacks, but he's that perfect blend of like an H-back, really, tight end and a fullback at the same time. I'm a huge Andrew Beck fan. I hope absolutely they bring him back.
You're a fan of a guy who plays fullback. I love it. D-back. This is different for you.
Well, because he's the perfect blend. He's not that. It's like the problem I have with Janovich is like, 22 Janos. The guy's short. He's undersized compared to linebackers. Beck is a taller, bigger guy. Like, there's just much more versatility for Beck than a guy like Jano. And then you got to go to the ridiculous, like Kyle Juszczyk, 300-pound fullback guy. And that guy lacks a lot of versatility. No, I'm a big, big Andrew Beck fan.
Andrew Beck was next on the list, but next is Cam Fleming.
Gone.
You know what? I mean, just thinking about the market, you might be if the 49ers don't re-sign a Mike McGlinchey, you might be able to get him at right tackle. I want to solve right tackle for more than a year. I'm sick of the revolving door. The original sin of this was moving our good friend Orlando Franklin away from right tackle after the 2013 season. They never should have done that. And that started the carousel. The carousel at right tackle has spun faster than the carousel at quarterback. I mean, you start going through the names who've been over there. It's like Paul Kornick. It's nuts. So I want to stop the stopgaps at right tackle. So I'm moving on from Cam Fleming. And look, remember with Cam Fleming, you were able to re-sign him the day training camp started.
Yeah.
So if you have depth issues, you bring him back at some point in this.
You got to hope there's a listen, if you trade your first round draft pick, you can't draft a right tackle at 29 through 32, wherever the 49ers are going to end up. So you got to hope like in the third round, there's some sort of great right. We're not in a good spot because if you really want a high quality right tackle, you'd have to be a little bit higher up in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you get to overvaluing a first round pick at right tackle because you're probably going to take a leap at somebody that you probably should fall down the board a little bit more. I'm actually scared at this position, guys. Again, there does not seem to be a real easy answer this particular year at right tackle. It kind of stinks.
Oh yeah. Okay. This is another mixed one. I feel like people are talking about Eric Saubert.
Sure. He's a safety blanket. Wilson loves him. You can get him on the cheap. Why not?
Yep. Same thing. I think you just go ahead and bring him back.
All right. Latavius Murray.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely. The guy is a workhorse. He's a dynamo. He pushed an offensive lineman who pushed a quarterback. He's a dude. Latavius Murray is a freaking dude. Yeah, you bring Latavius Murray back for sure.
Yeah. And I'm thinking like I'm bringing him back. It's a cheap contract. It's probably $2.5 million on 1 year. But I'm bringing him back not just because of the kind of player he was when he stepped in there, but also culture. Because when you had Dalton Reisner shoving Brett Rippon, who was the guy that stepped in?
A running back.
Latavius. Right. Latavius Murray stepped in there to put a stop to all this. And you're going to have to bridge the gap to Javonte Williams being back because I don't think he's going to be back by week 1 because he tore multiple ligaments in the knee. You might be looking at Javonte starting the season on the PUP, which would take him out for the first 6 weeks. And you trust Latavius Murray. He can block. He brings some power. He by the way, he got credited with a fumble on the reverse to Judy.
Oh, did he really?
Yes.
Oh,
because I guess because Judy didn't have possession of the ball, so ultimately the fumble gets credited to the person handing it off.
That's a weak fumble.
Which is kind of a shame for Latavius, because I can't sit here and say that he only has one fumble in the last 5 seasons anymore. But I'm willing to give that a pass because that was not a normal running back thing.
Absolutely.
But yeah, Latavius.
Oh, Maze froze.
Okay. Well, on that note, there's still plenty of more names that we're going to get to tomorrow. So make sure you come hang out with us 10:30 a.m. We love seeing you guys in the comments. It always makes our day. I'm excited. Come hang out with me on my birthday tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. coffee break. We'll see everybody then. Bye, everybody. Woo, woo.